My son Darius called me 23 times in a single afternoon. Dad, don't do that. Dad, please stop. Dad, can we talk? But it was already too late for regret. Everything had started a week earlier, on Father's Day, when he gave his father-in-law a $45,000 car and gave me a pair of $20 flip-flops. Yes, you heard that right. $20 flip-flops. While his father-in-law, Mr. Booker, received the keys to a shiny black BMW. I, Ernest Cole, the man who raised that boy since he was 5, got blue plastic sandals in a wrinkled paper bag. But let me tell you exactly how it happened, because what I did next left everyone in shock. It was Sunday morning when Darius texted me, "Dad, swing by the house after lunch. I've got something for you." I figured it would be the usual, a family meal, maybe the recognition I'd been waiting on for years. How naive I was. I got up early that morning, the way I always do. At 72, sleep hits different. I shaved carefully. I put on my favorite white shirt, the one Darius gave me years back when he still cared what I thought. I even dabbed a little of the cologne my late wife always praised. I stopped by Sweet Magnolia Bakery on the corner and bought that chocolate cake he loved as a kid. Ms. Loretta, the owner, smiled like always. "For Father's Day, right, Mr. Cole?" She asked if Darius had prepared something special. "I'm sure he has," I said, feeling a warmth in my chest that would soon turn to ice. I walked into his house grinning, carrying that cake like it was the finest gift in the world. The door was open, and laughter spilled from the backyard. Laughter that didn't include me. I rounded the corner, and what I saw split my heart clean in two. There stood my 35-year-old son, handing the keys of that shiny black BMW to Mr. Booker, a car that easily cost $45,000. The same kind of money I'd used to pay for his engineering studies. The same kind I spent when he went 8 months without work. "Happy Father's Day, sir," Darius shouted, while Mr. Booker hugged my daughter-in-law Jasmine. Everyone laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze there like a stranger at my own son's celebration. The man who'd raised that boy since he was 5, completely invisible. Mr. Booker stroked the hood like it was pure gold. "Son, you shouldn't have spent so much on me," he said, smiling from ear to ear, eyes flashing with satisfaction. Jasmine took photos from every angle, already planning to flaunt them on her social media. "What a generous son-in-law I have," she said while recording video. And Darius, my own son, beamed with pride as if he'd conquered the world. "You deserve it, Mr. Booker. You've always been like a father to me." Those words punched me in the gut, like a father. And what was I then? They finally noticed me. "Dad, you're here," Darius said, as if suddenly remembering I existed. He came over with a small, crumpled paper bag, the kind you get at the dollar store. "Here, this is for you." The bag weighed nothing, absolutely nothing. I opened it slowly, trying to hold myself together while the guests watched with polite curiosity. Inside were blue plastic flip-flops and a folded note. The sandals still had a $19.99 tag. The note was worse. "Dad, I know you don't like expensive things. Hope these last you a long time. Happy Father's Day. Love, Darius." Silence fell. Everybody stared, waiting for my reaction. Mr. Booker kept caressing his new car. Jasmine stopped filming. Darius looked at me with that expression that said, "You should be grateful." "Thanks, son," I said as calmly as I could. "They're very nice." Beholding those cheap flip-flops, something inside me snapped. It wasn't rage or even disappointment. It was deeper. It was the exact moment I realized that to my own son, I was worth exactly $19.99. I stood there while everyone circled the BMW as if I were another piece of patio furniture. Mr. Booker slid behind the wheel, adjusted the mirrors, tried the sound system. "This sounds incredible, son," he shouted as the music thumped across the neighborhood. Jasmine climbed into the passenger seat and went live on Instagram. "Look what my husband gave my dad for Father's Day. A brand new BMW." Comments poured in. "What a generous son-in-law. Your dad hit the jackpot. Wish I had a son-in-law like that." And there I was, holding my $20 flip-flops, ignored by my own son on the day meant to celebrate me. If they only knew. If they just knew what I'd done for that boy. I closed my eyes, and the memories roared back. Darius was 5 when his mother died in that accident. 5. I became father and mother at once. I remember his first nights crying for her, hugging me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. I worked double shifts at the factory 10 years straight. 10 years with no vacations, no breaks, not a single complaint. So Darius could have what he needed. At 16, he wanted a mountain bike. One specific model that cost $800. I made $10,000 a month, but I bought it. I ate beans and rice for 2 months, but he got his bike. When he finished high school, he wanted engineering at the priciest private university in the city. "Dad, that's where my future is," he said. Tuition was $30,000 a year. I sold his mother's blue Civic, the car she loved, to cover the first year. I worked nights as a security guard, on top of my day job, to pay the remaining 3. When he married Jasmine, he needed $1,000 for the wedding. "Dad, you only get married once." I took a personal loan I'm still paying. When they bought their first house, I gave them $0,000 for the down payment. When Jasmine got pregnant and they lost the baby, I covered all the medical expenses insurance didn't. When Darius lost his job 3 years ago, I didn't just pay their mortgage for 8 months. I also bought their weekly groceries. Jasmine kept going to her salon, kept buying pricey clothes, kept living like nothing had changed, and I kept paying without a word. Every birthday, every Christmas, every anniversary, I brought the most expensive gift. Not because I had money to spare, but because I thought that's how love spoke. I thought my son would see how much he mattered to me. Yet there I stood, watching him give a man he'd known just 5 years a present that cost more than I make in an entire year. "Dad, are you okay?" My granddaughter Naomi's voice pulled me from the flood. She was 16, the same age Darius was when I bought that bike. The only one who noticed my silence. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just admiring Grandpa Booker's new car." I lied, trying to smile. Naomi studied me with those keen eyes she inherited from her grandmother. "Do you like the flip-flops, Grandpa?" "They're perfect," I said, my voice catching. She leaned in and whispered, "Dad should have gotten you something better. You're the best grandpa in the world." Those words broke me. A 16-year-old grasped what my grown son could not. The party rolled on. Mr. Booker kept flaunting the car. Darius soaked up praise for his generosity. Jasmine streamed like she was starring in a movie. And I stood there with my flip-flops, wondering when I became a stranger in my own son's life. I went to the table where they'd set my cake. No one had touched it. There it sat, untouched, as if it didn't exist. Like me, I cut a small slice. It tasted like bitter memories, like everything I'd given with nothing in return. I looked around, neighbors, Jasmine's friends, a few of Darius's co-workers, everyone admiring the BMW, congratulating my son for honoring his father-in-law. Not one person asked what he'd given me. Mr. Booker strolled over wearing a victorious grin. "Ernest, do you see what a wonderful son you have? Look at the car he bought me." His words oozed satisfaction, as if to rub in that he was worth $45,000 and I was worth only 20. "Yes, very nice," I said, steady as stone. "Darius has always been like a son to me," he went on. "From the day he met Jasmine, I treated him like my own boy, and look how he paid me back." Every word was a knife. Darius had never been his son, yet he got better treatment than I, the man who raised him from a baby. When I finally left, Darius gave me a quick, distracted hug. "Thanks for coming, Dad. Enjoy the flip-flops." I walked to my old Ford, 15 years strong, because I couldn't afford a newer one. On the drive home, the flip-flops on the passenger seat stared back like a cruel joke. That night, in my favorite chair, the flip-flops on the coffee table, I made a decision that would change everything forever. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up until 4 in the morning, sitting in my chair and staring at those flip-flops like they were physical evidence of my insignificance. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mr. Booker's satisfied face as he stroked his brand new BMW. I heard the laughter as everyone celebrated his gift. I felt it stab in my chest again when Darius handed me that wrinkled little bag. I got up and went to my bedroom. I opened the closet and pulled out an old shoe box I'd kept for years. Inside were all the receipts, all the statements, all the proof of what I'd invested in my son's life. Not because I'm a petty man who keeps score, but because my late wife taught me to save everything for taxes. I spread the papers across the bed and started combing through them. The first receipt I found was from when Darius was 8. Swimming lessons, $200 a month for 2 years. "Dad, I want to be like Michael Phelps," he'd said. He never became a swimmer, but I paid every cent. Here was the receipt for the computer I bought him at 12. $500 back in 1999. A fortune for me at the time. "It's for homework, Dad," he promised. He used it more for video games than studying, but I paid it off in 12 monthly installments. University bills, $30,000 per year for 4 years, $120,000 total. Here were the loan statements, the overtime stubs, the weekends I gave up to cover each semester, the wedding invoice, $15,000 for 6 hours of celebration, the paperwork for the other loan I had to take, the one I'm still paying at 72. Receipts for when I help with the house, $000 for the down payment, plus $5,000 for furniture, plus $3,000 for the air conditioning, plus $2,000 for the backyard fence. The months he lost his job, 8 months paying his $2,000 mortgage, plus $500 a week for groceries, plus Jasmine's medical expenses, plus Naomi's karate classes. I didn't want her to give up. I did the quick math in my head. In total, I'd invested more than $200,000 in Darius's life. $200,000 I didn't have, that I borrowed, that I worked day and night to earn. That cost me my health, my youth, my own dreams. And he gave me flip-flops worth $1. But it wasn't just the money, it was everything else. The sleepless nights when he had a fever as a child. The soccer matches where I was the only father who never missed a game. The parent-teacher meetings where I always showed up. The teenage problems I solved without judging him. The life advice I gave when he didn't know what to do. I remembered when he had his first broken heart at 17. He locked himself in his room for 3 days without eating. I sat outside his door and talked for hours. I told him about my first love, explained that pain is temporary. In the end, he came out and hugged me, sobbing. "Thanks for understanding, Dad." I remembered his college graduation, the way he walked on stage, found me in the crowd, and pointed right at me. "This is for you, Dad," he shouted. I cried like a baby, feeling like the proudest man alive. I remembered when Naomi was born. Darius called me at 3 in the morning from the hospital, crying with joy. "Dad, you've got a beautiful granddaughter. She looks like an angel. Come quick. I want you to be the first to see her after us." When had all that faded? When had I become an obligation instead of a father? The answer was right in front of me, when he met Jasmine. At first I thought it was just young love. Jasmine was pretty, smart, from a well-to-do family. Mr. Booker had money, a big house, important connections. Little by little, Darius spent more time with them. "They're teaching me about business, Dad," he said. "Mr. Booker has contacts that can help me." The calls became less frequent. The visits got shorter. Plans with me were canceled because something came up with Jasmine's family. But I was still the first person he called when he needed money. The first person he turned to when trouble hit. I had become an ATM with feelings, the bank of Dad, always open, never charging interest, never asking questions. Going through those receipts, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Absolute mental clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw things as they were. Not how I wanted them to be. Not how I hoped they could be. But as they truly were. Darius had made a choice. It wasn't a mistake, not an oversight, not something he forgot. He chose to give Mr. Booker a $45,000 car and give me $20 flip-flops. He chose to make me feel invisible on my day. And I had to choose, too. I could keep being the father who accepts crumbs of attention just to keep his son close. I could keep pretending flip-flops were a thoughtful gift. I could keep loaning money I'd never see again, paying bills that weren't mine, being unseen until they needed me. Or I could choose my dignity. I looked at the clock. It was 5 a.m. on Monday. The banks opened at 9. I had 4 hours to decide what kind of man I wanted to be for the rest of my life. I showered, put on my best suit, fixed myself a calm breakfast for the first time in weeks, and waited for the bank doors to open. At 9 sharp, I stood in front of National Bank, with a folder full of documents. I told the account manager I wanted to cancel every automatic transfer I had set up. All of them. Are you sure, Mr. Cole? Some of these have been active for years. Completely sure, I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. The $500 monthly transfer I sent Darius, just in case. Canceled. The emergency credit card I'd co-signed, which he used for personal expenses. Canceled. The joint savings account where I deposited money each month for Naomi's future, but which Darius dipped into whenever he ran out. Frozen and moved entirely to my name. The life insurance where Darius was the sole beneficiary. Changed so the proceeds would go directly to a charity. Anything else, Mr. Cole? Yes, I said, taking out the extra credit cards I'd given Darius over the years. Cancel every one of these immediately. As the manager processed each cancellation, I felt invisible chains slipping from my ankles. Every canceled made it easier to breathe. When I left the bank at 11, I felt like a new man. There was no rage in my chest, no sadness, just a strange sense of freedom I hadn't felt in decades. I walked to my car, breathing the morning air like it was the first time. But I knew this was only step one. Darius would notice soon, very soon, that something had changed. Cards would start getting declined. Transfers would stop. And then the show would begin. I didn't have to wait long. The phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. It was Darius, but I let it go. He called again at 2:15. Again at 2:30. By 3, I had 8 missed calls. I finally answered the 9th. Dad, where are you? Why aren't you picking up? His voice was anxious, worried. Not the voice of a man who'd given his father $20 flip-flops the day before. I'm at home, son. What's going on? Something's going on, that's what. My credit card got declined at the supermarket. I called the bank, and they said it was canceled. Do you know anything about that? His tone shifted from worried to demanding, like he had a right to use my money without asking. Yes, I said calmly, as if I were telling him I'd changed my oil. I canceled it this morning. What? Why would you do that? I use that card for emergencies. Emergencies like what, Darius? Like the BMW you gave Mr. Booker. Long silence. I could hear his breathing quicken. Dad, that has nothing to do with this. I paid for that with my own money. Your money? The same money you had because you don't pay rent, because you don't pay most of your insurance, because you don't cover the bulk of your expenses, because your father does. That's not fair, Dad. You know I work hard. You work hard, I said, but with my subsidies. Tell me this. How much of my money did you use last month? Another long silence. I don't keep track of that, Dad. We're family. You're right. We are family. That's why I thought Father's Day deserved something better than flip-flops worth $1. It was just a gift. I didn't think you'd get so dramatic. Dramatic. The word hit like a slap. To him, my hurt was drama. My disappointment, exaggeration. My feelings didn't matter. It's not drama, son. It's dignity. And today I decided to reclaim mine. What does that mean? It means that from now on, you're going to live on your own money. No transfers, no cards, no subsidies. Let's see how easy it is to buy BMWs when you pay your own bills. You can't do that. I have responsibilities. I have a family. So do I. My primary responsibility is to myself, something I forgot for 30 years. Dad, please, can we talk about this? Come by the house, and we'll discuss it like adults. No, Darius. I'm not running over every time you call. I'm not fixing your finances. I'm not your personal bank. You're my father. Parents are supposed to help their children. Parents help their children. Children respect their parents. You chose to treat me like an ATM. Now I choose to treat you like the adult you're supposed to be. I hung up. My hands didn't shake. My voice hadn't cracked. For the first time in years, I'd stood up for myself, no apology. The phone rang again immediately. I let it ring. It rang 20 more times that afternoon. I didn't answer a single one. At 6, I heard a car in my driveway. I peeked through the window and saw Jasmine's Honda. Darius jumped out like a storm and marched to my door. Jasmine stayed in the car, probably ready to stream this family drama for her followers. He pounded the door like he meant to break it. "Dad, open up. We need to talk." I opened slowly, unhurried. Darius stormed in, face red with frustration. "What is wrong with you? Why did you cancel everything? Why aren't you answering your phone?" "Sit down, Darius," I said, pointing to the chair across from mine. "Let's talk like adults, like you said." He sat, but on the edge, like he was ready to spring. "Tell me exactly what you want," I said. "I want you to reactivate the cards, restore the transfers, and drop the drama." "And what are you offering in return?" "In return? I'm your son. You don't have to ask for anything in return." "Ah, but I'm supposed to give everything without asking for anything. Interesting version of family." "That's not it, Dad. It's just you've always been there. That's normal." "Normal, like giving your father-in-law a BMW and your father flip-flops. That kind of normal." "I told you that has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this, Darius. It's about priorities. It's about respect. It's about value." I stood, went to the bedroom, and came back with a shoe box full of receipts. I set it on the coffee table between us. "You know what this is?" "No, every receipt for every dollar I've spent on you for the last 30 years. Want to count them together?" His face changed. For the first time since he'd arrived, he looked uncomfortable. "Dad, we don't need to keep score. We're family." "You're right, we don't need to keep score. But you do need to understand something. Yesterday you showed me exactly how much I'm worth to you. $19.99. It was just a gift. It was a statement. And this is my reply." He fell silent at last. I could see the wheels turning, trying to find a way to bend the situation back in his favor. "Okay," he said finally, softer. "I'm sorry about the flip-flops. It was a mistake. Next time I'll get you something better." "There won't be a next time, Darius." "What do you mean, Dad? What do you mean there won't be a next time?" Darius asked, his eyes darting between my face and the box of receipts on the table. "I mean," I said slowly, "that I'm done waiting for crumbs of your attention. I'm done begging for respect. I'm done paying to be loved." He stood up, frustrated, pacing my living room like a trapped animal. "This is ridiculous. You're destroying our family over a gift." "No, son," I said, steady as stone. "You destroyed this family when you decided I was worth less than a stranger. I'm just recognizing what's been true for a long time. Tadeo, Mr. Booker, is not a stranger. He's my wife's father. And I'm your father, the man who raised you, fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, your house, your life. And what does that make me, Darius? Someone worth a $20 pair of flip-flops." He threw his hands up. "Enough about the damn flip-flops." "You're right," I said. "Enough, because from now on, there will be no more cheap gifts or expensive ones. There will be no more gifts at all." He stopped pacing, just stared at me. I could see in his face that he didn't recognize me. For decades, I'd been the kind of father who said yes to everything, who solved every crisis, who never raised his voice. The man standing in front of him now was new. "You can't be serious," he said finally, voice trembling. "I've never been more serious in my life. Dad, please, I made a mistake, but you can't punish me like this. I have bills, I have responsibilities. And I have 72 years behind me," I said quietly, "and a bank account that reflects 30 years of putting your responsibilities ahead of mine." He slumped back down on the couch, suddenly smaller, like a boy again. "I didn't know you felt this way," he said. "You didn't know? Darius, yesterday you gave your father-in-law a BMW and handed me dollar store flip-flops. You really didn't know that would hurt." "I thought you'd understand," he muttered. "I thought you'd know I did it for strategic reasons, for connections. Mr. Booker has contacts that can help me in my career." "Strategy," I repeated, my voice rising. "Humiliating your father is strategy. It wasn't to humiliate you. It was to impress him. And there it is, the truth. My dignity was the price of your ambition. You sacrificed your father for convenience." "Don't say it like that, Dad." "Why not? It's the truth. You always knew I'd understand, right? Dad will get it. Dad won't complain. Dad's dependable. You've been stepping on me for decades because you knew I'd never say no. He was silent. I could see the shame flicker in his eyes. Maybe guilt, or maybe just fear of what this meant for his comfort. What do I have to do to fix this? He finally asked. You can't fix it, son. You can't undo 30 years of taking me for granted. You can't erase the moment you decided my worth was less than your wife's father's approval. But I can change, he said, desperate now. I can be better. You can be better with the next person you decide to love. I said, with me, it's too late. Don't say that. I'm your son. I'll always be your son. Genetically, yes. Emotionally, I shook my head. I'm not so sure anymore. That hurt him. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped, the way he looked down at his hands. For a moment, I almost softened. Almost. Dad, please. Let me make it up to you, he said. Let me show you I can be the son you deserve. With what money? I asked. Because from what I understand, it's been my money all along that let you be so generous to others. I'll find a way, he said quickly. I'll work more hours, get another job, anything. To buy me expensive gifts and prove you love me? I don't need that anymore, Darius. I don't need your bought affection. It's not bought love, he said. It's real. Real love doesn't humiliate people. Real love doesn't use people like ATMs. Real love doesn't trade someone's dignity for social approval. He started pacing again, running his hands through his hair. I could see the desperation growing. Okay, fine. You're right. You're completely right. I've been selfish. I've been a bad son. Is that what you want to hear? I don't need to hear anything, son. I don't need your apologies. I need my peace. And how do I get you to forgive me? You don't. Forgiveness is something I give when I want to, not when you demand it. So what now? His voice cracked. I'm not your son anymore. We're done. You can be my son again when you learn how to act like one. Until then, you're just a 35-year-old man who needs to learn how to live without daddy's subsidies. That's cruel. Cruel, I said, leaning forward. You know what's cruel, Darius? Cruel is giving a BMW to a man you've known for 5 years and $20 sandals to the man who gave up his life for you. Cruel is using your father's money to impress other people. Cruel is calling your father dramatic for being hurt. I get it, he shouted. I get that it was wrong. What else do you want from me? I want you to leave my house, I said, standing. And I don't want you to come back until you can come here without needing anything, without asking for money, just because you want to be with me. And when will that be? He asked, voice breaking. I don't know, I said softly. Maybe never. He started toward the door, but stopped halfway and turned back. And if I need you, if I have a real emergency, then call Mr. Booker, I said. Ask if his brand new BMW can lend you some cash. Dad, please. Darius, go. We've said everything there is to say. He opened the door, but before walking out, he turned again, eyes burning. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up all alone. I'd rather be alone, I said, than feel alone when I'm with you. He slammed the door so hard the house trembled. Through the window, I watched him storm toward the car. Jasmine peppered him with questions I couldn't hear, but judging by her face, she was furious. They drove off, and the silence that followed filled every corner of my home. I sat down in my chair and, for the first time in hours, smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, it was relief. The kind of relief you feel when you take off shoes that have been cutting into your feet all day. That night, I slept better than I had in years. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Darius wouldn't give up that easily. He had too much to lose. And he was right. Over the next 2 weeks, he tried everything. First came guilt. Texts about how broke he was, how Jasmine was worried, how Naomi kept asking why Grandpa was mad. When that didn't work, he switched to nostalgia. Old photos, me holding him as a baby, his graduation, his wedding. Each picture came with a message. Remember when we were happy? When we were a family. Then came intimidation. Jasmine called me, screaming that I was a selfish old man, that I was destroying their family, that Darius was depressed because of me. Then came the intermediaries, mutual friends, neighbors. Even Pastor John from the church called to say I was being too harsh, that family was everything, that I should forgive. But I stood firm. Every call I ignored, every message I left unanswered, every guilt trip I refused to take. Each one made me stronger. Then came the move I didn't expect. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was sitting in my backyard reading when I heard footsteps on the grass. I sighed, thinking it was Darius again. But when I looked up, I saw Naomi walking toward me, eyes red and puffy from crying. "Grandpa," she said, her voice trembling. I stood immediately and hugged her. Her small body shook against mine. "What's wrong, sweetheart? What's got you so upset?" "Dad said you don't love me anymore," she sobbed. "He said you're mad at our family, and you're not coming to my birthday or my graduation because you don't want to see us." A deep, hot anger rose in me so fast I thought my heart might burst. Darius had used his own daughter, my granddaughter, as a weapon. He'd manipulated a 16-year-old to come plead with me. "Sit with me, Naomi," I said gently, guiding her to the chairs on the patio. "Let's talk about this like adults." She sat, wiping tears with her sleeve. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "have I ever treated you badly? Ever yelled at you or made you feel I didn't love you?" She shook her head. "No, Grandpa. You've always been amazing to me." "Then do you really think I'd ever stop loving you just because I'm upset with your dad?" "No, but Dad said you were furious." "I'm disappointed in your dad," I admitted. "But that has nothing to do with you. You've done nothing wrong." She sniffled, trying to process that. "So, you'll still come to my birthday?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'll come to your birthday, your graduation, and every important day you want me at." "Really?" Her eyes brightened. "Really? But you have to understand something important, Naomi. Your dad and I are dealing with grown-up problems," I said gently. "They have nothing to do with you. He did something that hurt me deeply, and now we're learning how to have a different kind of relationship." "What did he do?" she asked, her big brown eyes fixed on me. I hesitated. She was young, too young to fully grasp the layers of pride, betrayal, and manipulation, but smart enough to deserve an honest answer. "Your dad treated me like I didn't matter," I said finally. "He made me feel like my love was worth nothing, and I decided I deserved better than that." "Because of the flip-flops," she whispered. "Ah, so she knew. The flip-flops were just a symbol, sweetheart," I said softly. "The real problem is that your dad forgot that people who love us deserve respect." "I told him it was wrong," Naomi said quickly. "I told him he should have gotten you something better." "And what did he say?" "He said I don't understand because I'm too young." She frowned. "But I do understand, Grandpa. It was wrong." I smiled sadly. This girl, this bright, thoughtful girl, understood something her father still couldn't grasp at 35. "Naomi," I said, "no matter what happens between me and your dad, you'll always be my granddaughter. You'll always be loved. You can always count on me. And Dad can't. Your dad can have a place in my life when he learns how to value it," I said carefully. "Until then, I need some space." Her eyes filled with worry. "So you and Dad might never fix things?" "I don't know, baby. That depends on whether he's really willing to change, not just say sorry, but show it." She thought for a moment. "Can I ask you something, Grandpa?" "Of course. Why did Dad buy that fancy car for Grandpa Booker?" I chuckled quietly. "That's a good question. What do you think?" "I think he wanted to impress him," she said matter-of-factly. "Mom always says Grandpa Booker has money and important friends." "You're very perceptive," I said, smiling. "So that means Dad traded you for convenience?" she asked, her voice trembling with the clarity of her own words. Her innocence cut deep. In 5 minutes, this girl had put together what her father refused to see after weeks of fighting. "Yes, Naomi," I said quietly. "That's exactly what it means. And that's very wrong." "So you cut off his money," she said. "I did, because I realized he was using me. It's easy to be generous with other people when you're spending someone else's money." She thought again, chewing her lip. So now he has to be generous with his own money? Exactly, I said, smiling at her insight. She went silent for a long moment, then asked, Grandpa, can I still come visit you even if Dad doesn't? Of course you can. I'd love that. We can cook together, watch movies, talk about school, whatever you want. Are you sure it's okay? Dad says if I come here, it means I'm taking your side instead of his. There it was again, Darius's manipulation, even in the way he framed love. Naomi, I said calmly, this isn't a war. You don't have to pick sides. I'm not fighting with you or your mom. I'm just setting boundaries with your dad. What are boundaries? She asked, genuinely curious. Boundaries are how you decide how people can treat you. They're the lines you draw to protect your peace. Like when you tell a friend not to yell at you, and if they do, you stop talking to them until they respect you. Her face brightened, like when I told Marcus from my class not to call me names, and if he does, I ignore him. Exactly like that. So your boundary with Dad is that you won't give him money until he respects you? I nodded. That's one of them. She thought again, then nodded firmly. That's fair. If I were rich and someone used my money to impress other people while treating me badly, I'd stop giving them money too. I laughed softly. You're wiser than most adults I know, Naomi. She looked at me seriously. Can I tell you something you might not like? Sure, go ahead. I think Dad's scared. I raised an eyebrow. Scared? Of what? Of having to live on his own money. Of Mom finding out he doesn't make as much as she thinks. Of Grandpa Booker realizing he's not as successful as he pretends to be. Her words hit me like a sermon. Why do you think that? Because last night I heard him talking on the phone, she said quietly. He was asking someone about loans. He sounded desperate. Then Mom asked why he didn't just borrow from Grandpa Booker, and Dad yelled that Grandpa Booker wasn't his personal bank. The irony almost made me laugh, almost. Darius finally understood what it felt like to be treated like a walking wallet. Life, it seemed, had its lessons. Does your dad know you came here? I asked. She hesitated. No. I told him I was going to my friend Kayla's house. I didn't want him to forbid me. Would he have? Probably. He's really mad at you, Grandpa. He keeps saying you're being stubborn. And what do you think? I asked softly. I think he made a huge mistake, she said. And now he doesn't know how to fix it without admitting he was wrong. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. You're too smart for 16. You know that? Mom says it's because I spend too much time around adults instead of acting like a normal teenager. Your mom's not wrong, I said with a chuckle. But that's not a bad thing. It means you see things clearly. Naomi stayed with me until sunset. We made a simple dinner, fried chicken and mashed potatoes, and watched an old movie she hadn't seen before. We laughed. We talked about her school, her dreams of studying journalism, her friends. For the first time in weeks, my house felt alive again. When it was time for her to leave, she hugged me tightly. Thank you for explaining everything, Grandpa. I get it now. Thank you for coming, sweetheart, I said, holding her a little longer than usual. Remember, you can visit anytime you want. No one can stop you from seeing someone who loves you. She smiled through watery eyes. Even if Dad gets mad. Even then, you're old enough to choose who you spend time with. She walked down the path toward the bus stop, and I stood in the doorway, watching her go. It amazed me how a conversation with my granddaughter could bring me so much clarity. Her fresh perspective reminded me I wasn't crazy, that my feelings were valid, that my boundaries were fair. But she'd also given me information that worried me. Darius was desperate, and desperation made people unpredictable. I didn't have to wait long to see it. Monday morning, as I was sipping my coffee and reading the newspaper, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Jasmine standing there in a crisp business suit, her hair perfectly styled, her expression tight. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Morning, Jasmine, I said evenly. What can I do for you? We need to talk, Mr. Cole, she said. This has gone too far. What exactly has gone too far? This tantrum you're throwing. You're hurting my family, and your pride is causing pain to innocent people. Her tone was sharp, almost patronizing, as if she were scolding a child. Tantrum. Pride. Interesting words to use for self-respect, I said. Call it whatever you want, she snapped. The fact is, you need to stop this. Now, before you lose your family for good. So it's threats now. Not threats, facts. Darius is talking about moving to another city. He says he can't stay near someone who's emotionally blackmailing him. Emotional blackmail, I repeated with a low laugh. So now that he's facing consequences, I'm the manipulator? You're using money to control him, she said, stepping closer. Money to control him? I repeated. Do you know how many years Darius used my money without even asking what it was for? How many times he spent it on you too, while giving me scraps of affection? That's different, she said sharply. Parents help their children. It's natural. Parents help children who respect them, I said firmly. They don't fund grown adults who treat them like ATMs. Darius respects you, she snapped back. Oh, does he? I said, because where I come from, giving your father cheap sandals while gifting your father-in-law a luxury car isn't exactly a show of respect. She rolled her eyes. Are you really going to destroy this family over a pair of flip-flops? I'm not destroying anything, Jasmine. I'm just refusing to finance my own humiliation. You're being selfish, Mr. Cole. And you, I said calmly, are a woman who's gotten used to living off someone else's money. I suppose it's time to see what life looks like when you actually have to live within your means. Her face flushed crimson. You know what? You're right. I'd get used to the help. And you know why? Because Darius told me it was your way of showing love. He said you liked feeling generous, that it made you feel needed. That made me pause. He told you that? Yes, she said, arms crossed. He said you'd feel rejected if we didn't accept your help, that you needed it. So Darius had even lied about my motives, twisting generosity into dependency to keep the cash flowing. And you believed him? I asked quietly. Of course. He's my husband. It made sense. A lot of older parents feel that way. Did you ever think to ask me directly if that was true? She hesitated. Why would I? Darius knows you better than anyone. Apparently not, I said coldly. She went quiet. I could see in her face that for the first time since she'd arrived, something inside her was shifting. Maybe doubt, maybe guilt. So you're telling me, she said slowly, you never wanted to help us? I wanted to help you, I replied. At first, when I thought it was temporary, when I believed Darius would eventually stand on his own 2 feet. But it stopped being help a long time ago. It became a habit, an expectation. But you never said anything, she argued. How could I? I said, my voice low but firm. Every time I gave money, Darius would thank me, tell me how grateful he was, how much it meant to him, how he'd pay me back one day. I thought he appreciated it. He did appreciate it. No, Jasmine, I said, shaking my head. He appreciated the money. He took me for granted. Her mouth tightened. That's not true. Darius loves you. Darius loves what I do for him. There's a difference. If he loved me, he wouldn't have humiliated me in front of everyone, handing his father-in-law a BMW while tossing me a paper bag with $20 flip-flops. She looked down, her defenses faltering for the first time. Maybe it was bad judgment, she murmured. Bad judgment, I repeated bitterly. Forgetting to buy milk is bad judgment. Publicly belittling your father is a decision. Jasmine said nothing. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes darting around my porch like she was searching for the right thing to say. Finally, she asked softly, Can I ask you something honest? Of course. Is this really about the flip-flops? Or is it about something deeper? It was the first real question she'd asked me since the start of this mess. I sighed. The flip-flops were just a spark. The fire was already burning. For years, I felt like a guest in my own son's life. I get the shortest visits, the last calls, the smallest consideration. I'm only remembered when something breaks or a bill's due. No one asks how I'm doing, Jasmine. No one cares. They just assume I'll always be there. I didn't know you felt that way, she said quietly. You didn't ask. I replied. None of you did. She looked me straight in the eyes. So what now? Are you just going to cut us out? You won't be part of our lives anymore. I'll be part of the lives of the people who value me, I said. Naomi will always be my granddaughter. You can still be my daughter-in-law if you learn to see me as a person, not a resource. And Darius can be my son when he starts acting like one. She nodded slowly, processing that. And what would it take for Darius to earn your forgiveness? This isn't about forgiveness, I said. It's about respect. Forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust. Darius needs to show that he sees me as his father, not his financier. How could he do that? She pressed. That's something he needs to figure out. I'm not giving him a manual for how to love me. That's not how love works. She exhaled, frustrated. This is complicated. No, I said. It's simple. He either respects me, or he doesn't. He either values me, or he doesn't. He can't have it both ways. For a long moment, she said nothing. The tension in her shoulders eased just a little, as if she was finally seeing the cracks in the story she'd been told. Can I tell you something? She said finally. Go ahead. My father would never cut me off financially, no matter what I did. I smiled bitterly. Your father also never worked 30 years to fund your adulthood only to receive flip-flops as thanks. Did he? She looked down. Touché, she murmured. May I ask you something in return? I said. She nodded. Do you really think it was right for Darius to give me flip-flops while gifting your father a BMW? She hesitated a long time before answering. No, she said quietly. It wasn't right. And do you think Darius knows that? Yes, I think he knows. He just doesn't want to admit it, because that would mean accepting that he's been wrong about you for a very long time. Exactly, I said. And until he admits that truth, he can't change. She shifted her weight, looking conflicted. And if he does admit it? If he comes to you, apologizes, says he understands? That would be a start, I said. But words aren't enough. Real change is shown through actions. What kind of actions? She asked. The kind that prove he sees me as a father, not as his employee, not as his wallet. Jasmine was silent again. Finally, she gave a small nod. I'll tell him what you said, she murmured. I don't know if he'll listen, but I'll tell him. That's all I can ask. She turned to go, but paused at the steps. For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, she said. I think you're right. About all of it. But I also think Darius is scared. He doesn't know how to exist without you. I know, I said quietly. But it's time he learns. When she left, I stood in the doorway for a long while, letting the silence settle again. It was the first real conversation I'd had with anyone from their side that wasn't shouting or guilt-tripping. For once, someone in that household had actually listened. The next few days were strangely peaceful. No calls, no surprise visits, no messages full of accusations. It felt like a silent truce. Maybe everyone was finally processing what had happened. I used that calm to do something I hadn't done in decades. Think about myself. For 72 years, I'd been Ernest Cole, the father, the grandfather, the provider. But I'd forgotten what it meant to just be Ernest, the man. What I liked. What made me happy outside of helping others. I started rediscovering that little by little. One morning, instead of worrying whether Darius needed money or if I'd paid one of his bills, I made myself a full breakfast. Scrambled eggs with mushrooms, crispy bacon, buttered toast, and real Colombian coffee I'd been saving for a special occasion. I took my time, reading the entire paper from front to back, savoring every bite. After breakfast, I went for a walk in the park near my house. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, but had never stopped. It was beautiful, benches under tall trees, a small lake with ducks, walking trails where other seniors exercised. I sat on a bench and just watched people. A couple of older men were playing chess. A woman about my age was feeding the ducks with breadcrumbs. A group of folks were doing Tai Chi in the grass. First time out here, a woman's voice asked beside me. I turned to see her, tall, elegant, with soft gray curls and warm brown eyes, probably mid-60s. She wore a simple lavender blouse and a smile that could melt ice. Yes, I admitted. First time I've actually stopped to enjoy it. It's a good place for thinking, she said. I come every morning since I retired. Oh yeah, what did you do? I was a nurse, she said proudly. 35 years at County General. You? I worked in a factory. 40 years of early mornings and overtime, I said with a small chuckle. That must have been tough. It was, I said, but it gave me purpose. And what gives you purpose now? She asked. That question hit harder than I expected. What did give me purpose now? For decades, it had been Darius, raising him, protecting him, fixing his messes. Without that, who was I? I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. She smiled knowingly. Ah, you're in transition. I went through that after retiring. Suddenly, I wasn't Nurse Martha anymore. I was just Martha. It was terrifying at first. How did you get through it? I started doing things just for me, she said. Things I'd put off for years. I learned to paint. I traveled alone. I joined a book club. Didn't that feel selfish? I asked. At first, yes. But then I realized that spending your whole life living for others isn't noble. It's self-destructive. You can't pour from an empty cup. Her words settled deep in me. I'd spent my life emptying myself for Darius, giving, sacrificing, compromising, until there was nothing left of me to give. Can I ask you something personal? She said suddenly. Of course. Did you lose someone recently? You have that look in your eyes, the kind people get when they're trying to make sense of a loss. Something like that, I said softly. I lost the illusion that I mattered to the people I love most. She nodded, understanding immediately. Those are the hardest losses, she said, when you realize you've been giving to people who only take. Exactly. You have family? She asked. A son and a granddaughter. My son and I, we're not seeing eye to eye right now. And your granddaughter? She's an angel, the only one who still sees me as a person, not a paycheck. Martha smiled. Grandchildren usually do. They see with their hearts, not their egos. They don't have the baggage that comes with being someone's child. I chuckled. You're right about that. Can I give you a bit of advice? She said. Please. Don't live waiting for people to change, she said gently. Live in a way that makes you happy, with or without their approval. If they change and join you in that happiness, wonderful. If they don't, you'll still have peace. It's that simple. I smiled sadly. Simple but not easy. She laughed softly. Simple means clear. Difficult means necessary. Setting boundaries always feels hard at first. I've been setting a few lately, I admitted. And how does it feel? Liberating and terrifying. Then you're doing it right. We talked for almost an hour. She told me about her travels, how she'd learned to paint watercolors at 60, about the book club that had changed her life. You should come, she said as we stood to leave. We're reading a book about second chances next Wednesday. It's a good group. You'd fit right in. I'm not sure I'm much for social clubs, I said. No one is at first, she replied with a kind smile. But it's a good way to meet people who understand where you are in life. And at our age, curiosity is a gift. I left the park that day with her phone number in my pocket, and something more valuable, a new sense of possibility. For weeks, I'd been trapped in anger and disappointment, focused on what Darius had done. But Martha was right. I couldn't control whether he changed. I could only control how I lived. The next Wednesday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I ironed a shirt just to go out. A simple blue button-up, the one I used to wear to church when my wife was alive. I looked in the mirror and realized I hadn't seen myself smile, really smile, in a long time. It wasn't a proud smile or a forced one, just calm, peaceful. When I got to the park, Martha was already there, holding 2 coffees. I wasn't sure how you liked it, she said, handing me one. So I guessed black, no sugar. Right on the first try, I said, surprised. Most men who've worked hard all their lives drink it that way, she said with a wink. We walked to a small pavilion near the lake, where 6 other people were sitting in a circle with books and notepads. They welcomed me as if I'd been part of their group for years. The air smelled of grass and morning dew, and the sunlight bounced off the water in flashes of gold. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't Dad or Grandpa. I was just Ernest. The book we discussed was called The Art of Letting Go. I smiled at the title. It felt like the universe was mocking me, or maybe guiding me. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't share much, just a few sentences. I spent most of my life holding on to things that hurt. I said, people, expectations, guilt. I thought letting go meant giving up, but now I see it means giving yourself permission to breathe again. There was silence for a moment. Then one of the women, a retired teacher, nodded and said, "That's the truth, honey." After the meeting, Martha and I went for a walk. "You're a natural speaker," she said. "You should write that down somewhere." "Right," I chuckled. "The only thing I ever wrote were checks for my son." "Then start writing for yourself," she said. "You've got stories in your eyes, Ernest." That night I did. I pulled out an old notebook from the drawer, the same one where I used to jot down bills and expenses, and wrote on the first blank page. Chapter 1. The Day of the Flip-Flops. I didn't plan to publish it or show it to anyone. I just needed to release everything I carried for years, the love, the disappointment, the exhaustion. By the time I put the pen down, 2 hours had passed. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night, without waking up to worry about anyone else. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My life began to take on a rhythm that was entirely mine. Mornings at the park, afternoons reading or writing. Sometimes lunch with Martha, who had a way of making even silence feel companionable. I'd expected the absence of Darius and Jasmine to feel like a hole, but instead it felt like space. Open, breathable space. Of course, Naomi visited often. She'd come over after school, help me with small chores, tell me about her classes, and sit with me while I cooked. I could see the conflict in her eyes, torn between loyalty to her parents and her love for me. One evening, while she was helping me wash dishes, she said, "Dad still talks about you, Grandpa. He acts angry, but I think he misses you." I smiled sadly. Maybe he does. Missing someone is easy. Changing is harder. She looked down. He's been different lately. Quieter. He even sold his gaming console. Said he needed the money for bills. I raised an eyebrow. So he's learning what responsibility feels like. I think so. He's also stopped going out with Mom's friends. They fight a lot now. That part hurt to hear, but I didn't say anything. The truth was, I didn't want to see anyone suffer, not even Darius. But sometimes pain is the only teacher that sticks. A few weeks later, I was watering the front garden when I saw a car slowly pull up to the curb. It wasn't Jasmine's. It wasn't new or shiny. It was a used silver sedan with scratches on the side. The driver sat there for a long time before finally stepping out. Darius. He looked older, thinner, like someone who hadn't slept well in months. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed. He stood by the mailbox for almost a minute before walking up the path, holding a small brown box in his hands. "Dad," he said quietly when he reached me. "Darius." We just stood there, both unsure of what to do next. For once, he wasn't defensive, wasn't acting like the world owed him anything. He looked humbled. "Can I come in?" he asked. I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Come on." We sat in the living room, the same room where months earlier he'd shouted at me, where I'd drawn the line that changed everything. He placed the box on the table. "Before I say anything," he said, "I need you to open this." I hesitated but did as he asked. Inside was a pair of leather sandals, real ones, good ones, handmade, the kind that last a lifetime. On top was a note. "Dad, I can't undo what I did, but I can try to walk differently from now on. These are a reminder that I'll never again take the steps that hurt you." I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. "You bought me shoes again," I said softly. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but this time, I paid for them myself. Every dollar." We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "I lost a lot these past months. I almost lost Jasmine. I almost lost my job. And for a while, I thought I'd lost you for good. But then Naomi told me you joined some book club, and you sounded happy. I realized I'd never actually seen you happy before. Not like that. I said nothing, just listened. I've been going to therapy, he continued. At first I went because Jasmine threatened to leave if I didn't get help. But then I kept going because I realized something. I've been chasing approval my whole life. First yours, then hers, then everyone else's. I didn't buy that car for Mr. Booker because I loved him. I did it because I wanted people to say I was successful. I wanted to feel like I mattered. But the truth is, I was just repeating what you did, trying to buy love with sacrifice. His words landed like stones in my chest. And did you find what you were looking for? I asked. He shook his head. No. I found emptiness. The more I tried to prove myself, the less I liked who I was. When you cut me off, I was furious. I thought you were cruel. But now I see, you were freeing me. You forced me to stand on my own. I leaned back, letting his words sink in. For years, I dreamed of hearing something like this. But now that I had, it felt strange. What about Jasmine? I asked quietly. We're trying, he said. We're both trying to be honest this time. It's hard, but at least it's real. And Naomi? He smiled for the first time. She's the glue holding us together. She talks about you all the time. She keeps reminding me that respect isn't shown with gifts, but with actions. She's a smart girl. She is, he said, looking down. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness yet. I know I hurt you in ways I can't fix. But I need you to know that I see you now. Not as the man who solves everything. Not as the guy who pays the bills. As my father, the one who gave up everything for me. And I'm sorry for all of it. The silence that followed was long, but it wasn't heavy. It was the kind of silence that heals instead of wounds. Finally, I said, I don't know if I can forget what happened, Darius, but I believe you. His eyes watered. That's enough for me. We stood, and I pulled him into a hug. For the first time in years, it didn't feel one-sided. It wasn't me holding him up. It was both of us standing on our own, meeting halfway. When he left that evening, he didn't ask for money. He didn't promise miracles. He just said, I'll keep trying. And I said, that's all I need. After he drove off, I looked at the new sandals on my table. They were simple, well-made, sturdy. A symbol of steps taken in a new direction for both of us. A week later, I wore them to the park. Martha noticed immediately. New shoes, she asked with a grin. Kind of, I said. A peace offering. From your son. I nodded. She smiled. Looks like you're both learning to walk again. We sat together on our usual bench, watching the sunlight dance on the water. The world felt lighter, like the weight I'd carried for 72 years had finally lifted. And for the first time, I wasn't just a father, or a provider, or a man trying to prove his worth. I was simply Ernest Cole, a man who had finally learned that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't giving, but letting go.